This video gets really heavy. If you're in a sensitive place or don't do well with heavy topics, then just be wary of that going in. Maybe don't watch this video. In writing this, though, I've tried to come from a place of hope. From a place of empowerment. If you're someone who really struggles with mental health, and I mean really struggles, like you are taking it seriously, and you are really trying to get better, but it's still really hard, it still feels like an uphill battle, then I hope this video can help. At the very least, I've realized how important it is that I be completely honest with where I'm at. A lot of this stuff would be nice to get off my chest, and I think it's good for you all to understand what I'm going through. I've made a few different update videos talking about how I've been feeling and what I've been dealing with, but I've held back in those videos in a way I don't intend to here. I think it's important to be honest about mental health. Part of removing the stigma around it is just to talk honestly about it. I think a lot of us are suffering a lot more than we want to admit. It's hard to make myself talk about some of these things, but I think it's important that I do. So I will warn you again, this video does not hold back. Just be prepared for that. For some backstory, I was born into a fairly dysfunctional family. My mom's ex-husband was an interesting person. I was born after she remarried, and I had a fairly stable upbringing. But I got to be immersed in the aftermath of everything that had happened before. All my siblings have done the best they could with the hand they were dealt, but things have been a pretty big struggle for them. My parents have tried to be there for me, but them dealing with constant family crises has made that hard at times. Some additional stuff I've dealt with was being diagnosed with high-functioning autism. I've also dealt with some pretty bad anxiety and anger issues, so I had to navigate all that, and in general, just not fitting into the culture around me. I'll spare you my whole life story, but the point is I've always had a lot to navigate. It could be worse, and I'm grateful it's not, but it's still been hard. My response to this for a lot of my life has been escapism. I would play lots of games, mostly flash games, spend a lot of time fantasizing about stuff, escaping to my own inner world, and most notably for what I'd end up doing later, I would watch a shit ton of YouTube. A lot of it was pretty questionable content, not really the kind of stuff you want to be watching in your formative years. I think that's a pretty universal Gen Z experience, but still, it's not great. Also, at the ripe young age of, I think, 14, I engaged with a certain type of content many boys that age have engaged with, which started a lovely new addiction. And living in a pretty highly religious area, I got to feel extra shame, so that's fun. Not the greatest upbringing, not gonna lie, but it really could have been a lot worse than it was. As the years went by, I started to make friends and got to the point where I was actually doing pretty well. Now I won't say the turning point was right when COVID hit. After graduating the small little high school I went to, I kind of lost a lot of structure and the close-knit community that came with it. I felt pretty lost. I lost contact with many of my friends, and that was hard. Actually, honestly, things started going downhill at the end of 11th grade, but I'll spare you the details on that. We don't need to go into that. The point is, I wasn't doing amazing before COVID, but then COVID happened, which was, in fact, COVID. On top of just the baseline that came with all that, an earthquake hit the apartment one of my brothers was staying at. When it rains, it pours. And he came to live with us, and he is just not the kind of person you want to live in the same house as. It was awful. And he wasn't in a good mood because, he hurt his back really bad because of the earthquake. It just wasn't fun. My mom also got long COVID and took months to recover, and developed sciatica in the process, which she's still been dealing with, though it's gotten better. Anyway, pretty shitty time. And during it, I just dived deeper into escapism. I guess the one positive about that whole time was the solidarity between the whole world. Kind of sucked for everyone. So there was a lot of YouTube content worth watching, and I was able to start a Minecraft server with my friends. And those two things really helped me get through that whole time. But when you really think about it, I kind of fell in love with watching an unhealthy amount of YouTube and playing an unhealthy amount of Minecraft, something that kept me going at the time, but really not a sustainable way of living long term. It was after COVID when this YouTube channel really started taking off. While I wish I could say that I truly deserved the success, it didn't come from a healthy place. I know how to make a good YouTube video, largely due to the sheer amount of YouTube I've watched, and while I was intensively grinding away at big project after big project, I'd learned to ignore other areas of my life. I still approached this channel with that same escapism mindset, not living a balanced life, not moving towards other goals really, not caring nearly enough about my mental health. Between both college and Glorious Fortress and its videos, for around 2 months I was spending like 60 hours a week. And the last week working on that level, it was probably around like 90 hours. In hindsight, I have no idea how I did that. Up until maybe a year and a half ago, things weren't getting better. So, one of the hardest things I have to talk about in this video is how my addiction to that old certain type of content I mentioned earlier just kept getting worse. I ended up getting into some kind of questionable fetishes. I won't say what they were for the sake of both of us. I will say, as a Geometry Dash YouTuber, none of said content shared an abbreviation with creator points, so thank God for that. I do feel the need to clarify that. Love this community. Anyway, but without going into more detail, my point is that the shame and self-hatred were growing to a pretty painful level, and instead of ripping off the band-aid and talking to trusted people about this, instead of actually processing it and moving on, I decided I would take this to my grave, which, of course, just made everything way worse. I'm proud to be free of that addiction for several months now. I think it might even be over a year at this point. It definitely is over a year with, like, the more questionable stuff. I started opening up to mental health professionals and one friend I really trust, so if you have anything you feel ashamed of and want to take to your grave, I urge you pretty heavily to not do that. Just rip off the band-aid and talk to someone you trust. I would be really careful who you share that kind of stuff with. Some people will just make the shame worse. But I'd make it a goal to find someone you're comfortable sharing that with and share it with them. It does really help. And so another thing I've struggled with is delusions of grandeur. As someone who learned to escape into their own inner world, I can kind of see how that developed. And sure, I have accomplished some pretty cool stuff, be it at the expense of my mental health. But I've had a really bad tendency to ruminate on all kinds of big, unrealistic dreams instead of spending that time actually taking meaningful action towards bettering my life. For the time I was in college, I really didn't talk to anyone or make any friends. I would just sit down and do my work, getting pretty frequently distracted, and then I'd walk up and down the halls at my campus imagining all kinds of fantasies. Stuff like becoming the super hot, successful celebrity, which realistically I wouldn't actually enjoy that. I never actually believed I could become president, but I definitely thought an unhealthy amount about what I would do if that just so happened to happen. I would spend a lot of time listening to a bunch of music over and over and imagining these really cool big GD levels that I can make to it, ruminating pretty heavily on just an absurd amount of ideas. Even if I were to work like 80 hours a week just making levels, I'm pretty sure I still wouldn't be able to make all the ideas I kept thinking about, and I just spent so much time like thinking about these to the point where it kind of became a bit of an obsession. At the time, I didn't see any problem with this, but looking back, I spent such an incredibly unhealthy amount of time ruminating on all these big ideas, and not nearly enough time, talking to people or trying new hobbies. And that set me up with a pretty unstable foundation. January 2024. I had recently decided to switch my major to software engineering. 2.2 had just come out. I hadn't taken any meaningful breaks from Geometry Dash after Glorious Fortress. All my YouTuber peers were milking 2.2 for content, while I just had no motivation to make anything. And on top of the... what? On top of the doll? Voice to text, what are you on? And on top of all of that, I also got really sick, so that was great. And with everything compounding on top of my already pretty terrible mindset and self-shame, I had a legit nervous breakdown. At the ripe age of 23, I had an actual quarter-life crisis. In the span of just a couple months, I did end up doing a lot better. I was going to therapy, and I managed to get pretty stable again. It's been almost 2 years since that happened. For the next year and a half, I did a lot of things to try to find myself. For a while, I got back to the YouTube grind, but after a few months of that, I found myself more focused on meeting new people in person. During this whole time, I still found myself pretty directionless, still unsure of what I wanted to do going forward. I questioned if I was trans or non-binary for a while before finally realizing that I'm overthinking it and I don't actually care. I was doing better for a while, and I was legitimately finding some pretty helpful ways to process my self-shame and kind of misandric attitudes. But when I look back, it feels like it all led nowhere, because I still had this attitude of wanting to be someone superhuman. An attitude that I understand. Continuous family problems, feeling behind in life, wanting to be a good example to my audience and keep up with my YouTuber peers, having parents that themselves do way too much, pretty bad at setting boundaries, a lot of people-pleasing tendencies. I put a lot of pressure on myself. Looking back, that pressure was never reasonable, but I didn't see it that way at the time. I would have moments of clarity where I felt like I'm enough as is, but then it would always go back to this toxic desire to do more and more and more, a desire that ironically leads to less action because I feel so overwhelmed. I did some pretty questionable stuff during this time. I, at one point, decided to skip therapy for a couple months to theoretically work on Captain Cosmo, that old level I didn't finish, for 50 hours a week. That did not work and was a stupid idea. I tried microdosing on psychedelics for a while, just to do daily things. At one point, I was trying to train myself to understand Crash Course videos at ×2 speed because I wanted to be able to watch more content and take in things faster to keep up with everything. Terrible fucking idea. Don't do that. My attitude was genuinely becoming borderline psychotic. Yet I still managed. I was doing all right. Until I wasn't. This is where things get really, really heavy. I'll give you a timestamp to skip to if you're not prepared for that. A lot of things happened at once. I had just come back from VidCon, which was fun, but it was also a lot. Geometry Dash YouTubers might actually be the most ADHD people on the entire planet. No shade to anyone. I was pushing myself way too hard to try to keep up. The reality is, that's just really not my kind of vacation. I already wasn't sleeping great coming back from that, and still being way too hard on myself. That same brother that came to live with us during COVID got really sick and he wasn't sleeping. He was being very insisting that my mom come to help him clean out his house so it could be sprayed for mold, and even though she was really busy with a lot of things, including an upcoming test, a really big test she was studying for, and she was taking care of my nephew, being pretty bad at setting boundaries herself. She did try to go over there and clean up stuff, and seeing her push herself so hard, I wanted to help. Even though I was not in a place to push myself harder at the time, I still tried to. Let's see, what else? I had decided to take on a new big GD project for someone else. I can't give details on it, but it would have been just way too ambitious. I was looking for a part-time job outside of YouTube, decided to apply to intern at this one place I really like going to, still with this internal mindset that I actually needed to do more so I can become strong enough to exist in the circumstances I have, and also become this amazing successful person that I wanted to be, all while refusing to just set boundaries and say no to things. And with all that together, I broke. I broke bad. Okay, final warning. This is by far the most heavy part of the video, so here's that timestamp again. Just be prepared. Everything compounded into me not sleeping for 7 days straight. That's a slight exaggeration. I did get a couple hours here and there towards the end of that time period, but it's pretty close. The fact that I didn't hallucinate once during this whole time is pretty incredible, but it still fucking sucked. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. You'd have to be like a psychopath to wish that even on your worst enemy. It was awful. It was terrible. Horrible. There's a reason why I called my first nervous breakdown mild. During that was the first time I ever felt genuinely suicidal. But that feeling only lasted a couple hours, and I was able to break out of that and not go back there without too much trouble. After a couple months, things got back to a stable point. This time was actual hell. After days of not sleeping, I had a plan. I was genuinely starting to think, so this is it. The thought of what that would do to my family, my friends, and all the people out there that look up to me, it was horrible. But at the time, it didn't matter because I genuinely thought, I'm too broken to salvage. But I didn't take that route. I got admitted to a psych ward for a few days, not the nicest environment, not gonna lie, but they did get me on the medications I needed, and it gave me some time to slow down and reflect. My first instinct coming back from that was to try and get my life back to normal. I was gonna try and just continue my little mountain town. I was planning on starting other projects as well. I just wanted to get back to the way things were. I think a lot of this came from some bad examples in my family, but you just don't bounce back from something like that. That was around 4 months ago. Things have been a roller coaster ever since. While I have been sleeping, it's been inconsistent and not a ton. I tried new meds and they seem to help for a little bit, but then I just go back to barely sleeping some nights. It's been enough to function on, but it's still frustrating. And to be honest, kind of scary. Things in my family are still a mess. The state of the world is what it is. Brain rot garbage internet culture still runs rampant. People shouting into the void left and right about absolutely fucking nothing. Meanwhile, brushing off actually important things like, mental health. That stuff is somehow nothing. People constantly seem fixated on things I just don't understand. It feels like things just keep getting worse. I'm not going to ignore that fact. So why do I keep going? These past few months have been a serious perspective shift for me. I still find myself frustrated. I still find myself scared. I still find myself angry at so many different people and things. I still find myself angry at myself. There's still a voice in me that tries to self-sabotage. Not like an actual voice, I don't hear voices. But there's still a part of me that tries to self-sabotage, that wants to be masochistic without purpose, because somehow that's supposed to make me stronger. But while those parts of me still exist, I've slowly watched a new part of me grow stronger. Out of everything I've tried, the things that have really gotten me through are gratitude, spending time with the people I love, and just appreciating every little moment I get to live. It's not easy coming to terms with your mortality. But as long as I'm still alive, I want to make it a point to appreciate each new day. I have a pretty good therapist right now, and there's one thing she said that really stuck with me. Each day you live is a day added to your life, not a day taken away. I keep reminding myself that even though things are hard, every new day is a gift. I'm grateful to still be here. I'm still sensitive, kinda easily triggered, though I definitely see that getting better as time goes on. I'm still scared, but every day I try to shift that fear into acceptance that everyone's time will eventually come, into gratitude for every new day I get to live. I'm learning to accept myself as is. For a long time, what kept me going is thinking, "Oh, if I play my cards just right, then I can catch up and be this great person I want to be." It's been hard accepting myself as the broken person I am. There's a lot of internal resistance. But that's another one of the things I feel has slowly been getting better. Man, sorry if I sound kind of detached talking about this. I think I've kind of rewritten this multiple times and tried to record it a couple times because I didn't quite like it. I was falling to pieces when I first wrote this. I think I'm a little desensitized now. Yeah, this is really heavy. I can't help but think back to Technoblade. For the few of you who don't know, Technoblade was a Minecraft YouTuber who got cancer and died. He knew his odds weren't great, but throughout it all, he chose to stay positive, to make the most of the life he had left, to keep us laughing. Something I appreciated at the time, but I don't think I appreciated how truly brave that was. I don't know what my future holds. I have a hard time knowing what I'm even capable of after all that. Uncertainty has always been a hard thing for me. I like to have a plan, I like to have a direction, a future to work towards. But I have been surprised at just how much I've been able to come to terms with it. Not completely, but more than I thought. Uncertainty is just a reality of life. You can try to push through and manifest your destiny, but it's always at a cost. And if it doesn't work out, then you're left sucked dry with nothing to show for it. Life is full of surprises. You can decide to love that or hate it, but reality won't change to fit your views. One thing I've finally decided is that I won't let all this keep me from living my life. It's easy to just lay in bed, play video games, be depressed and angry and just tired. But I'm making it a point to still get out there, still move towards my goals. Even if I'm relaxed at night, insomnia has just kind of become a pattern. I mean, I am sleeping, just not great. I don't know how long that'll take to get better, or if it will. I mean, I've always struggled with insomnia to some degree. That's been more the rule than the exception. But what I am in control of is how I choose to view that, and whether or not I let it rule my life. That doesn't mean it's easy. It's hard and scary, and I don't know what will happen. But as long as I'm still alive, I'll try my best to make the most of things. You know, I've learned a lot from going through this. Didn't feel like I was getting much out of it at first, but it just takes a while. When you go through something like this, it takes time, and then you start to see things in a new way. you do start to learn. You do start to grow and adapt. You just gotta hold out. It takes time. It takes a lot of time. It could take years to fully recover from this. I don't know exactly what this means for the future of my channel. I'll probably still work on projects for it, though probably not at the pace I originally hoped to. I feel bad. I've wanted to be a good example. I've wanted to fit in and keep up with my YouTuber and creator peers. But ironically, in caring so much about that, I feel like I've ended up actually being quite a bad example. But the best I know how to do is the best I can do. I'll try not to be too hard on myself. And at the end of the day, I think the most important thing to most people is that I'm doing okay, so I'll try not to forget that. I want to end off on a promise. Shortly after my breakdown, I made a promise to my parents. A promise that no matter how hard things get, I won't take my own life. I don't know when my time will be, but I do know it won't be by my own hands. Of course, even after making a promise like that, there are moments where things are so hard, the thought of breaking this promise passes through your mind. But no matter how much I want to, this is the one promise I never plan on breaking. I want to extend this promise to everyone watching this video. I promise to all of you that I won't give up. And if some of you watching are struggling with similar feelings, first of all, here are some crisis hotlines. Please call them if you genuinely start to feel that things are over, or at the very least, talk to someone you trust. Talking to someone really does help. Just please hold on. But on top of that, I invite you to make the same promise in the comments. I'm not your friend, and I highly request you to make that same promise to friends and family that you trust. But maybe this can be a start. There's just so much suffering in the world, and I wish there was more I could do about it. But for now, this feels like a good start. Thanks for watching, even though it was probably pretty hard. This was hard to record. I hope you have the best day you can, and please know that you are enough as you are. The world needs more people who understand what it's like to hurt. People who choose compassion and empathy through it. And at the end of the day, you deserve to keep your life. Don't throw it away just because you want to make a point. Don't throw it away because things feel hopeless in the moment. You deserve better than that. I'll see you in the next video.